Chapter 12. The Party. Honestly, Jordan was sick of everyone being so depressed. Sure, they all had fair reasons. Liz had her brother, Emma was a skip, Margot had whatever she continued to refuse to share with him, and everyone was still a bit shaken from what had happened with Andrew's squad in Poland. But if Jordan had the ability to recognize that his own mother was probably blown to pieces, if not being actively tortured in an Islamist prison camp, and still wake up with a smile on his face, he couldn't see why the others were incapable of doing the same. This morning, his smile was caused by Margot, who woke him by kissing him while he slept. As soon as he realized where he was and what was happening, he grinned from ear to ear and flipped her upside down to prove he was in charge. That week had been fuzzy. For whatever reason, time seemed to accelerate and jump around when he tried to remember how each day had gone. Maybe it was Liz's essay. Maybe it was the stress of next week's Nation Ball playoffs. Jordan was off again for another weekend in Brazil for the first round, and they'd been training like crazy to play against the Brazilian team's strengths. This, coupled with Margot starting her hockey season, meant that they had seen very little of each other, and also that Jordan was able to forget about the secrets that she was hiding from him until they were alone together. That had been the cause of their fights, hadn't it? The image of her shouting at him in the stairwell kept popping into his head each evening, but her words were mumbled. He was unable to remember what exactly they had been fighting about. Every so often, Xander's voice replaced hers in his memory, and he remembered something about a conversation alone with him, but even that was a dead end. He'd never been so unclear about remembering things before, which made Jordan wonder if everything he imagined about them fighting wasn't just in his dreams. "Good morning," he whispered, rolling his mouth under her chin. "Hi," she smiled back. "Your breath is terrible." "Well, yeah, what's new?" "Happy Halloween," she deflected. "You still want to go to Rachel's tonight?" He rolled off her and sat up on his side of the bed. "I think it'd be good for everyone," he argued. "Did you invite Liz?" "I invited everyone but Johnny," she mused, sitting up with him. "Good," Jordan replied. "He'd probably flip once he sees what everyone else is doing." "They said no alcohol." "Yeah?" He laughed. "Of course they did." "That means Emma's out too, though," Margot sighed. "Someone's got to stay behind and distract Johnny." "That's what she signed up for," he shrugged. "Still, I wish she didn't have to miss it because of him." "We'll take turns," Jordan insisted. "I'll cover the next one." Margot got up and cracked her back loudly. "Did you ask Andrew to come?" He said no. On Tuesday, Jordan had extended Andrew an invitation after Emma had seconded her mother's request that they try to get him out of the house. He'd replied rather bluntly, "Honestly, Jordan, I'm not going to an underclassmen party just so y'all feel better about me." If Andrew had somewhere to be on Halloween, it was not with them. Rachel Tennant, the daughter of the city's head of secondary education, had the house to herself for the weekend. She'd been among Emma and Margot's inner circle since the beginning of middle school, now separated by just 3 floors in a separate squad. Having not seen the rest of them virtually all semester, save for brief interactions at homecoming, they had been few the first she reached out to about throwing a Halloween party while her parents were away. "Did you decide what we're going as?" he picked up as Margot moved toward the bathroom. She held up a bottle of brown hair paint. "Hunger Games," she determined. "Katniss and Gale." "That book's been out for 4 years," he argued. "You know she ends up with the other one, right?" "I don't care," she dismissed. "It was the wrong choice, and Gale's cuter." He stopped asking questions as Margot closed the door to the bathroom to take a shower. The translucent door allowed him the slightest of images of her obscured figure. She never allowed him access while she was in there. Not for his sake, but for hers. One of the few things Margot had let him in on about her past, showers were her refuge, and he didn't dare take that away from her. The school day was a normal Friday. The only things distracting Jordan throughout the hours were fitness and history, the latter of which began a 2-week-long unit on 1974, the year of the program's infamous administration change. In the former, Jordan had been standing amongst the others waiting for instructions on a rock climbing exercise, when a slight glance over at Xander triggered what he could only describe as a premonition. It couldn't have lasted more than a second, but suddenly Jordan's mind traveled to the dressing room of the training center, where Xander was telling him something about a spy in the squad. It had to have been a daydream. He'd never lived this before, but it sat in his head like a memory. But every other word Xander spoke was muffled, save for the word spy. And his mind jumped to an argument with Margot in the stairwell, but again the words were muffled, and it played out differently than he remembered. She too was talking about a spy. Jordan shook his head and found himself back in the gym, now dispersing amongst the other squads to start climbing a temporary course. He looked back at Xander, who paid him no attention, and Margot, who gave him her usual flirtatious smile. Whatever the vision had been, he was rattled by it, but it gave no more thought as they continued with their day. It completely left his mind when Xander threw the file into his lap. "What does any of this have to do with China?" he said aloud. The other stared at him, as though he had the answers to his own question. He paged through it as Xander continued. "We have a bit of a task ahead of us, and not necessarily an execution, but planning it and preparing for anything that might go wrong." Jordan looked over at Liz, the contents of her essay playing through his mind. To his surprise, she appeared calm, and he reasoned that she had already been briefed, and her worries about the mission assuaged. The IREA believes the new Polish government are attempting to broker some kind of trade and weapons alliance with China, and they're going to use top-secret government secrets as payment. Our mission is to infiltrate the Polish embassy in Beijing, hijack the private computer of the ambassador, and clear his drive of a very extensive but a very specific set of files. Xander reached over and took the stack of papers back from Jordan. It seems easy enough, he went on. The issue comes in the roles you 6 need to play, as well as the fact that you must be completely weaponless. All 6 of you will be given false identities as the children of various Polish businessmen, studying at a multilingual prep school in Beijing. Now, your first names won't be too far from real names, but when we're out on the training floor, from now on until then, your new names are your only names. Then comes the tough part. Starting Monday, you 6 will need to start painstakingly studying both Polish and Mandarin. The Mandarin is going to be easier. You just need to appear as though you understand it the same way an extra-national student would. The difficulty is going to be the Polish. Accents, conjugations, and the ability to both answer and ask questions without hesitation will be a necessity. But by the beginning of December, you won't be allowed to speak English in your language class anymore. Kent's hand shut up. Why doesn't a Polish squad take this one? Xander scratched his forehead. Usually the IREA doesn't greenlight missions in local jurisdictions unless absolutely necessary, he stated. Although the fact that this is taking place in China would probably make it okay. He took his eyes from Kent and walked them around the room at each one of them indiscriminately. But the Polish program is under some pretty heavy scrutiny from their government right now. They're not even supposed to know they exist, but after what happened with Emma's brother, things aren't looking too hot. That's why our mission has 0 room for failure. Margot knitted her eyes. I thought you said this mission would be easy. Well, it should be, Xander determined. But you're not allowed to get it wrong. The assignment hampered the mood, but the temperature rising back over 50 for the first time in weeks helped Jordan from feeling too discouraged. Still, the images of Xander and Margot repeating the word spy kept echoing through his mind. Emma managed to snap him out of it when they sat down in the cafeteria. A collection of orange and black cookies, cakes, and pies filled the table around their otherwise bland serving of pot roast. What are you guys doing tonight? She asked, setting them up to dissuade Johnny from asking more. Margot answered before he could. Erickson's is hosting a Disney Channel Halloween marathon, she announced. All those crappy movies from our childhood we grew up watching before bedtime, they're showing them on the big screen. Kent narrowed his eyebrows. You grew up watching Disney Channel? Honestly, Kent, Margot piped, where do you think Quebec is? Oh, I'd love to join you, Liz added, her face bright with curiosity. We got everything Disney secondhand. She turned to Kent. Want to come too? Nah, he staged. There's a mini golf course in the industrial district that's redecorated for Halloween. I've never played before. I figured it'd be fun. By yourself? Jordan noted. I've gone before, Johnny admitted. It's not worth it. Still, Kent shrugged, taking a bite of orange ice cream. It's that or stay home. Emma cringed. She literally just asked you to go with her. What are you 2 doing? Jordan interrupted. Emma turned her attention, her expression changing as soon as her eyes peeled away from Kent. My parents, she said. They always hand out candy at the front door for a political tool. Mom didn't want Andrew doing it with him alone. Well, that's nice of you, Margot rewarded. You too, John? I figured I might as well, Johnny remarked. I suppose we're getting too old to trick-or-treat nowadays. Honestly, if I were back home, I'd probably be doing it, Liz admitted. With the kids, I mean. When do you go back? Margot voiced. 15th of December, Liz stated. That gives you time to show me Thanksgiving, doesn't it? Emma brushed past the second question. You're coming back your second semester, though, aren't you? Today was the transfer deadline. Liz looked around the table. It's only been 2 months, but yeah, I'll stick around till May. Jordan could feel her feet shuffle in her seat, as though not sure this was the correct decision. He spoke up. They told you about the mission before, right? Like, you didn't choose to stay and then Xander sprung it on you as a surprise, did he? No, Liz claimed. He told me a few days ago, and my family and I agreed to do it. She looked to Margot, whose eyes had turned worried with Jordan's question. It's right after I come back, she went on. That gives me a whole semester with nothing to worry about. Besides, if I chickened out and transferred at break, I'd lose my mission opt-out clause for the next 3 years. Liz took a bite of pumpkin pie, but felt Margot's eyes still trained on her. Plus you heard Xander, she calmed. As long as we all do our jobs, there's nothing to worry about. Emma and Johnny left shortly after dinner, luckily for the rest of them. After Margot and he dressed, Jordan sat in the common room waiting for the others. Had he known what her intention was, he would have never known who they were dressed as, even with their hair now dyed brown. Their outfits were just regular clothes. Sure, they matched the costumes in the movie, but he wondered how many other people would notice. Liz and Kent took his attention away from his own look. Both dressed in black, Liz had spiced up her already tangled hair with streaks of white and gray, tying it all together with a Day of the Dead-style face mask she must have painted on herself. Kent had allowed her to do the same to half of his, leaving the unmarked side of his face plain and recognizable, but masking the side which was otherwise still swollen from his broken nose. Rachel's family lived outside the city near Reeves Creek. a small 7 cul-de-sac development located just east on the highway beyond the direct jurisdiction of the program. This made it less likely that whatever extremes this party reached would be busted by authorities, but significantly more difficult to get in and out of the city gates once the sun was down. Margot, having learned one of Andrew's old tricks, commandeered a government SUV for the 4 of them under her status as a member of the Prime Minister's household, claiming that the 4 of them were visiting her aunt for the holiday. Her plan was then to use the same vehicle service to get back after midnight, using the cover of a personal emergency back at the common room. Per Andrew's experience, neither the drivers nor the system ever checked the legitimacy of the claims. The sun was just peeking below the lights of the city when they reached Reeves Creek. Margot thanked the driver as they all bound out to the boulevard and wished him a happy Halloween. The man drove off without so much as a thank you. In the right corner of the cul-de-sac, a driveway full of cars and bumping noticeable music was masked from attention by the still rapid flow of costumed children, several dozens of whom were circling their way through the various streets. Kent spun around, taking note of the different houses. Who lives out here? Margot was quick to respond. Rich assholes who think Mr. Guerin is watching their every move? That's already half the city, Jordan thought to himself. Kent continued asking questions. Is it part of the program? Legally, no. Technically, yes, Margot replied. It's not its own town, so everyone here works and lives through Tylersville, but its legal jurisdiction is the Converse County Sheriff, so the chances of something happening if we get caught are slim to none. Jordan could feel Kent's steps slow down as they approached the house's front steps. Get caught doing what? This time Liz spoke up first. Kent, honestly, open your eyes. Margot knocked on the door and their friend Paige opened, dressed head to toe in a bright pink cowgirl outfit. Tucked under her arm was a pumpkin-shaped bowl full of Reese's peanut butter cups. Hey! She cried, opening the door and giving Margot a huge hug. Catching their confused look at the bowl, she relayed, for appearances. She turned and greeted Jordan before turning to the other 2. I don't know you. They're cool. They're in our squad, Margot defended. Liz stuck her hand out. Kent did the same. Paige led them through the house's enormous entry hall before circling a corner into the back living room, where at least 20 other people were gathered in various circles, music pounding so loudly it was affecting Jordan's vision of the upstairs rooms. One boy was already passed out completely, tucked behind the back of a couch while 2 others drew on his face. He was messed up by the time he got here, Paige explained. I promise no one else is that bad. I should have shown up earlier, Kent joked, raising his voice over the music. No thanks, Margot added. I hate when people come early. Paige shrugged. We said 7. She pointed to a clock above the fireplace. It's 7:30 now. Where's Rachel? Margot asked, surveying the carnage. Probably downstairs, making sure the boys aren't breaking her dad's batting cage, Paige led. Come on, I'll help you find her. Jordan waited to see if she wanted the others to follow. Make yourselves at home, she dismissed. All right, stupid question, but I've never been to an American party, Liz announced. What am I supposed to do here? Second that, Kent added. Geez, really? Jordan looked around and began pointing. Well, I'm going to the kitchen to grab a drink. There's a pong table set up in the garage, a dartboard downstairs, a little mini golf course set upstairs. Otherwise, just find a place to chill and hang out. The 2 followed him into the empty kitchen before making their decision. Liz grabbed herself a Coke can from the open cooler, then tossed another to Jordan. Kent immediately took a red cup from a stack on the table and poured himself a glass from a keg of lemonade next to it. Jordan nearly choked. Starting out strong there? Kent gave him a look. What? You know that's probably... Liz shot her hand in front of Jordan and interrupted. No, let him figure it out. Her skeletal face was grinning from ear to ear. Kent looked mortified. What? He hesitated. It's lemonade, right? Jordan laughed. I'm sure it is. He bit his tongue. Try it. Kent looked up fearfully, before taking a deep breath and taking the slightest of sips. Immediately his face contorted, and he stumbled backward, nearly spilling his cup all over the table. Oh, God, he choked. What is that? Jordan and Liz looked at each other and laughed. Lemonade, Jordan insisted. But it's almost certainly spiked, added Liz. Kent's face returned to normal, though still skeptical of the situation. What do you mean spiked? Oh, stop being so thick, she chortled. Why do you think we didn't want Johnny to know? Jordan added. Kent looked down at his cup, still trying to figure it out. So, you mean this is... Yes, the pair said together. Kent's eyes slowly moved between them and his cup, before he looked up at Jordan with a note of determination and shrugged, drinking from it again and throwing the entirety down his throat. Jordan and Liz both stared at him, horrified. Kent's face contorted again, but he threw his fist over his mouth as though about to vomit. Liz ran to his side, but he held up his hand and took a small breath. All right, he blinked his eyes open. I'm going to go downstairs. He left his cup on the table and walked away, ignoring them completely. Liz looked at Jordan, still wide-eyed. You think I should keep an eye on him? She asked. Jordan held up his hand and tapped his finger. I got it, he replied. You go have fun. She grabbed herself a bottle of water to go along with her Coke, then moved toward the second living room, where a handful of girls were throwing cards across the floor while sitting in a small circle. Jordan took a moment to compose himself and laugh at Kent another time before working his way over to the garage. After watching the first game, Jordan joined the table alongside Luis Rubio, an athletic sophomore he had known since his first year in Taylorsville's elementary school. The pair weren't close by any means, but knew each other through spring soccer and had enough awareness of each other's skills to make a formidable team. 4 games later, they had won every contest and lacked a new challenger. Walking back into the house, a hand stopped him from going further into the entry hall. So did you finally lose? He looked down on a familiar freckled face. Oh, he frowned. Hey, Carissa. She looked at him, waiting for an answer to her question. No, we didn't lose, he admitted. There's no one left to beat. The girl smiled. Her small eyes, already pulled tight by her light brown hair, tucked back in a Star Wars braid, were made even smaller. I'd take you on, she boasted. Yeah, I bet you would. I need a partner, though, she sighed. I hear your girlfriend is giving the boys downstairs a run for their money. She paused a second. In floor hockey, I mean. Jordan gave no reaction. How's that going? She continued. You actually care? Of course I care, she lied. Why wouldn't I care? Jordan had a million responses to that particular question, but kept all but one to himself. Are you seeing anyone? Her nostrils flared. One side of her mouth twitched in an irritated smile. No, she admitted. Not since homecoming, at least. What was wrong with him? Too clingy, I guess, she joked. I always want to make it known that we were together. Jordan rolled his eyes. I can't even imagine. Well, that's what I told him, she claimed. No one else? Jordan asked courteously. Any of the boys in your squad? No, Carissa shrugged. One's gay, one's way too into video games, and one is a psycho girlfriend who accused us of dating one time. She took a breath. But no. That's too bad, Jordan dismissed, eager to move on and be anywhere else. I guess, she sighed. How's your brother? Jordan finally let himself look her in the eyes. The malice he'd expected to find was instead filled with genuine curiosity. He's fine. I like your brother. No, you don't, he stuttered. But, whatever. Well, who cares? Tell him I say hi, will you? He looked down again to find a small grin on Chris's face. Yeah, he conceded. Will do. Thanks, Jordy, she dismissed. I'll talk to you later. Before he could have the final word, she zipped around a corner and disappeared. Infuriated, Jordan moved over to an open couch in the living room and sat down, letting the music distract him. A familiar voice snapped him back to attention. Did you know Rachel's dad has a custom Cobra in the garage? Kent was back, clearly sobered from his initial buzz. He sat down in the seat beside him. Jordan half-turned, keeping his full focus to himself. You mean that car that I've been using as a coaster for the last hour? Kent's face looked more shocked than with the lemonade. You did what? Dude, I know nothing about cars, Jordan relayed. Ask to drive it sometime if you're so obsessed. Ask to... Kent caught himself. I can't drive. Then why are you so into cars? I don't know, he admitted. Because I'm Italian, probably? Then you should be into fashion and fascism too, shouldn't you? Kent ignored the question. Who is that you were talking to? Jordan looked up, finally giving Kent his full attention. Who, Carissa? Yeah, No. Jordan stopped, sensing the direction their conversation was headed. You should stay as far away from her as possible. How did you... You really have a terrible read on girls, don't you? Kent opened his mouth, looking for something to say, but was unable to formulate anything beyond... What's that supposed to mean? I mean, Jordan went on, your obsession with Emma and Margot when they're in obvious relationships. Kent closed his mouth but looked on impertinently. Like, you could probably have every other girl if you wanted in this house, if you paid attention to the ones who were not taken or not borderline psychopaths. Kent continued to stare at Jordan, before Jordan lowered his voice. Is your mom that way too? Excuse me? Kent stirred in his seat so loudly half the room turned to stare at them. Jordan held his hand up to pacify him. Taking a second's pause, he waited until the room returned to its prior buzz before continuing. I'm not being an asshole, he claimed. It's an honest question. You show up here out of nowhere the week before this all starts, and you hardly mention a thing about your mom and nothing about your dad, which tells me they're either dead like mine or it's a bit more complicated than that. Kent's stare lost its edge. He looked down at his feet for a moment before returning his gaze softer than before. All right, so maybe it is. I know it is, Jordan agreed. I looked up who your dad is. Kent swallowed like it was some dark secret, but his immediate calmness told Jordan it was a truth he was comfortable admitting. When Johnny read your file at the bowling alley, I didn't think twice about the name, but your dad is the Dalton Hawk, isn't he? Like casino billionaire playboy Dalton Hawk. Kent swallowed again. Yes, he voiced quietly. You're not listed on his Wikipedia page, Jordan continued. It just says he filed a defamation lawsuit against an Italian model in 2000 for a false paternity allegation, and it was settled out of court. Kent's face turned white. That's you, isn't it? He looked down at his feet and choked. Yeah. Jordan held his breath. I'm sorry. Kent's head shot back up to stare at Jordan, his eyes now filled with uncertainty. What? Jordan repeated himself. I'm sorry. Don't feel sorry for me, Kent barked. Why not? Jordan argued. Your dad has his own reality TV show. You have 3 brothers who are constantly in and out of the news cycle. I see your dad's ex-wives on jewelry advertisements every time I go through the Denver airport. And your dad publicly sued your mom for the fact that you were even born. He raised a shoulder apologetically. That sucks, dude. Of course I feel sorry for you. Yeah? Well, Kent mumbled. I know, Jordan proceeded sarcastically. My parents are dead and we're both in this stupid program against our will, so I shouldn't feel sorry for you. Kent smiled. Yeah, something like that. Well, too bad, Jordan shrugged again. I feel genuinely terrible for the way you grew up. Kent paused for a moment before arguing. So why are you still such a dick to me all the time? Jordan had expected the question. Because I still don't like you very much, he replied honestly. What he had not expected was Kent's reaction. Instead of his usual jump to defense, he just sat there stoically, accepting what Jordan was saying without pouncing. All right, he conceded. Why'd you even bring me then? Because Liz wanted you to come, Jordan stated bluntly. You could have said no, Kent gestured. You're right, I could have, he agreed. But just because I don't like you doesn't mean I can't learn to like you. Kent stared pensively. All right, how? Just because you have a reason to be a contentious dick doesn't give you a right to be one, Jordan advised. Whatever garbage you lived with in New York, leave it there. Figure out who and what you want to be here and leave the rest of it behind. That sounds a lot easier than it is, Kent voiced. Yeah, but you also hardly know anybody, Jordan raised. And all I needed is to, see you put in the effort. All right, Kent nodded, not breaking a smile, but his eyes full of something new. How do I... Hey, guys! His question was interrupted by the voice Jordan had been waiting for all evening. A thin girl with long, braided brown hair sat on the table facing the couch. How are you guys doing? She asked. Fine, Kent growled. His expression changed to one of awkward irritation. I'm Rachel. She offered a hand. Kent took it cautiously. You must be Kent. Margot's been telling me all about you. Has she? He replied with further irritation. Rachel just smiled back kindly. I was showing her my dad's model car collection downstairs, she continued, ignoring Kent's attitude. She said you were into cars. I'm sure she did, he barked. Rachel's cheeks turned red as she turned to Jordan for help. He buried his teeth into his lip and watched it continue. Well, Rachel continued patiently, I was going to go upstairs and see if I could get in on the mini-golf action. You guys want to come with? Kent threw one foot over his knee defiantly. Look, he deferred. Thanks, but we were kind of talking here, so maybe we'll catch you in a little bit, all right? Rachel's red cheeks turned white as Kent dismissed her from the table. She shot one last look at Jordan as he struggled to keep his composure, before finally mumbling, All right, see you around, and leaving them alone. As soon as she disappeared from the room, Jordan burst out laughing. Kent's face dropped. What? Buddy, that was painful, Jordan continued, choking back tears. Do you know who that was? Kent looked back to where she had disappeared. Rachel, but... Understanding began to dawn on his face. First off, Jordan listed, that's our host. Second, she's super hot. And third, she's super available. And she was flirting with you. Kent's eyes darted back and forth. She was... What? How could you not have noticed that? Kent's face began to turn white, too. Now, you want to start with a step in the right direction? Jordan urged. At the very least, you find her and apologize. Moreover, you take her upstairs and do what you lied to Johnny about doing in the first place. Kent ran off before Jordan had time to start laughing again. He finally found his way back to Margot downstairs, where he found her holding her own against the boys from the freshman hockey team. With her size and skill, she probably could have done the same on the ice, but in the miniaturized version, and especially on her knees, she was dominating. He made it to the bottom just as she whipped a one-handed slap shot across the room and into the opposing net. A few surrounding the game gave a moderate applause. Margot just kept staring at the two boys she had just defeated, sweat dripping down her forehead. What do you say, Jack? she boasted. Best 3 out of 5? The frontmost of the pair got to his feet and threw his stick at the ground, storming up the stairs with a reply that was mostly expletives. His partner did much of the same, while Margot jumped to her feet and caught a glance at Jordan. Hey, she smiled, and he noticed the temporary hair dye now dripping slightly down the sides of her face. Hard game? He offered. She switched to French. Hard game, she agreed. Not difficult. When's the last time you saw Liz? He asked. Talking up a storm with the other British girl upstairs, Margot claimed. I guess Jet Devers has one in his squad, too. What are the odds of another being here? 50-50, she grinned. Either is or she isn't. Jordan chuckled back at her. What about Kent? She fanned. Upstairs with Rachel, he smiled. Her eyes widened. What, like Rachel? Jordan nodded. Yep. As in upstairs? Jordan nodded again. Whatever you said to her, it worked. He added, not without a few stumbles on his part. Well, good, she calmed. Maybe that'll get him off Emma's tail for a bit. That's a step in the right direction, he agreed. I hope so, she pondered. He's cute. I feel bad for him. Before he could agree again, her face dropped. I'm sorry, she blurted. He narrowed his eyebrows. What? Why? She switched back to English. I shouldn't have called him cute, she said quickly. It's fine, he rejected. I know what you meant. You know I don't get jealous. I know, but I shouldn't have said it. Her eyes looked nervous, afraid to see bother in his. Margot, he spoke as firmly as he could. I don't care. Like, his mom was a model. Of course he's objectively attractive. Her demeanor changed. What? Jordan was quick to move the conversation. Oh, I looked up his mom. She was an Italian fashion model in New York. Was? Her expression turned worrisome. I mean, she's still alive, he pacified. She's just not a model anymore. I have no idea what she does anymore. Margot contorted her face in surprise. What about his dad? Jordan grinned. Dalton Hawk. Margot raised an eyebrow. What about him? He's Kent's dad. Had Margot been drinking anything, she would have spit on the floor. Shut up, she gasped. I'm serious, he flirted. Dalton Hawk from the development, she shrieked. That's Kent's dad, yeah. Screw off! She backed away. And his mom is a model. She finally concluded that Jordan was telling the truth, a bewildered smile showing on her face. What the hell is he doing here, then? Well, your guess is as good as mine, he shrugged. I'm pretty sure his mom grew up where Riley's living. Margot's bewilderment held for a long pause. And he thought Rachel was rich, she broke. That's a weird thing, Jordan thought aloud. I don't think he comes from money. Margot's face grew even more perplexed. His dad's the richest native in the world, and his mom's an Italian model, she speculated. How doesn't he come from money? Well, I don't think he's even met his dad, he added. You've noticed how fascinated he is with everything in town. Plus, he hardly ever mentions his mom. That doesn't mean he's not loaded to the gills, Margot argued. Maybe he's just embarrassed by them. Is that the matter with yours? He thought briefly. I don't know, he uttered. Something still doesn't add up. You don't know anything, do you? I didn't know his dad was Dalton effing Hawk, so clearly not. I don't think Liz does either, Jordan claimed. Oh, she definitely would have told me that, Margot chimed, suddenly eager to run up the stairs. I've got to go tell her that. Even I knew who he was before I moved here. She kissed him on the cheek. Margot, wait. She stopped briefly on the stairs. Meet me upstairs in 10 minutes, she rushed. Upstairs. We can, She ran off before finishing her sentence, leaving Jordan to wonder how he had been capable of keeping the secret for more than a week without needing to tell someone. Realizing he was alone and desperate for another Coke, he followed Margot's trail far more slowly before diverging toward the kitchen. He reached for the cooler, only to find it empty. Desperate for something to drink and needing more than just water, he turned his attention to the still half-full glass keg of lemonade and thoroughly considered the repercussions of taking a cup, before ultimately deciding to fill one and take a sip. It was just lemonade. Sure, it was perhaps the sourest, least appetizing lemonade he'd ever tasted, but it was nothing beyond that. His feet found Kent in an upstairs bedroom, and he started laughing out loud. What's so funny? Looking up from his terrible drink, Jordan was perturbed to once again see Carissa standing across from him. Don't you have anywhere else to be? She frowned, but not in an unexpected way. Harsh, she courted. But no. In fact, your girlfriend asked me to come get you. She went outside for a sec. Jordan grimaced. Margot told you to come get me for her? Carissa frowned again. I was the only person there, she argued. Don't think I'm beyond being friendly to her. Still, she wouldn't send you. he voiced. Whatever, she dismissed. Stay here. She walked out of the kitchen. Jordan could hear the sliding glass door open and close in the dining room. Something didn't feel right, but maybe there was a chance Margot had sent her. After all, it had been months since he'd even spoken to Carissa. Maybe she was telling the truth, and Margot wanted to show him something stupid in the sky outside. It wouldn't be the first time, he thought. He followed the sound of the back door, unable to see anything in the dark yard before opening it and stepping out in the freezing night. Margot wasn't there. Instead, Carissa was alone, standing just to the side of the door where he could not immediately see her through the glass. As soon as he shut the door, he realized his mistake. He had completely forgotten to use his effect and even check outside to see if Margot was really there. Using it now, he could see her inside the front living room, gossiping with Liz about Kent. He turned to go back inside. Wait! Carissa yelled before he could reach the handle. Just... let me talk to you alone quick, before you go back inside. 1,000 voices in Jordan's head told him it was a terrible idea to stay, but his feet remained planted to the concrete patio. He turned to stare at the shadow speaking to him beyond the light of the house. What? He growled. I just... wanted to say... she started, before her voice broke off. Jordan heard a sniffle from the darkness. It's freezing out here, he glared. Hurry up! I just wanted to say I'm happy for you, she sighed. I'm happy that you're so happy. Jordan hesitated. Thanks, he replied, turning to go inside again. And I'm sorry, she interrupted. I just wanted to tell you that, in case you thought I was just going out with you because I felt bad about your mom or something, or that I broke up with you because I didn't like being around your brother. He turned back aggressively. Carissa, I don't give a single damn why you broke up with me. I genuinely didn't care then, and I really don't care now. So, will you let me... Wait! She screamed again, desperately grabbing at his hand and walking into the light. He tugged away. Don't touch me, he barked. I'm leaving next week, she cried fearfully. Her announcement held in the empty night air. Sri Lanka, she continued. Pirates. We're expecting them to be armed. Jordan threw up his arms in frustration. And you want me to feel sorry for you? I don't want to die alone, she sobbed, again reaching for his arms. You're insane, he thought, but the words to come out of his mouth were, that is so far from being my problem to deal with. Please, she begged, and Jordan couldn't believe the scene playing out in front of him. One last time, in case I never get to... She practically threw herself into him. He pushed her back. What the hell is wrong with you? He shouted, and finally she stayed back, silent. Something forced him to lean toward her. With vitriolic disgust, he concluded, Don't get chopped to pieces. Before he could turn, the door opened without him, and again he realized he had completely forgotten to use his effect. Margot was staring at him, leaning over his ex-girlfriend, his forehead practically touching hers, alone in the dead of night. Jordan, what the hell? He couldn't even respond. So shocked at her seeing something he knew she would take out of context, he had nothing to even begin to say. Then Margot turned, and realizing too late that her claws were extended, he failed to stop her arm as it swung at Carissa's face. The sound was unforgettable. Carissa hit the ground with a neighborhood-awakening scream. Every light in the surrounding houses shot to life. The party froze, and everyone inside came rushing to the back door. Through it all, Margot stood completely petrified, her right arm hanging limply to the ground, blood dripping from her elongated fingernails. With the first motion anyone made to help Carissa, Margot bolted for the side gate. Margot! Jordan shouted, chasing her as fast as he could. He didn't reach her until they were beyond the last cul-de-sac. Where are you planning to go? He shouted breathlessly. Back to the city? It's another 2 miles to the gate. They'll never let you in like this. Margot was crying, her claws retracted, but her blood-stained hands covering her face shamefully. Margot, you didn't see anything. Just leave me alone, she cried. Margot, he breathed. Nothing happened. Well, you obviously let her get that far. No, I didn't, he lied. Honesty was the wrong answer for Margot right now. I went outside because I was tired of the noise, and she was out there. And you didn't see her there beforehand? She shrieked. God, Jordan, you're such an idiot sometimes. I'm the idiot, Jordan spit. You just cut her face open a week before she's sent to go on a mission. Margot clearly had not been aware of this. Her own face dropped as hers turned into hyperventilation. He instantly regretted telling her. Margot, he whispered. Margot, it'll be fine. No, she screamed. No, nothing's ever fine. Jordan held his breath. He had no idea what she was talking about. Margot. He tried again, but she cried louder. He looked around the horizon. Depending on who got word to whom first, patrol cars could come from either direction. Are you really just going to sit here until they find you? She was sitting on the ground now, her head covered between her knees as she sobbed. She completely ignored his question. Fine, he brandished. I'll just leave you there. No! She screamed, her loudest yet. No, you can't leave me! She shot to her feet and threw her arms around him, tucking into his body with her entire weight. The same confused disgust he had just felt with Carissa was now challenging his feelings for Margot. You can't leave, she mumbled into his chest catatonically. You can't leave. You can't leave. Margot. He peeled her away from him. What are you talking about? Even in the faint moonlight, he could just make out her red face. Her eyes were so bloodshot they were practically glowing. You can't leave me, she repeated pitifully. Jordan cringed. I'm not gonna... Why would I leave you? Margot straightened, wiping her face with her jacket sleeve. Because everyone always does. What do you mean? He pushed. Who always leaves? Everyone! She escalated, threatening to burst again. Emma left me for Johnny. Riley left me behind. My mom... She stopped, breaking down into her hand. She left me behind with him. Again she fell into him, but this time Jordan caught her. They took them away, she bawled, looking up with tears flowing down her face. Jordan, I don't know where they are. He shook his head, confused. Don't know where who are? My sister, she muttered. My brother, they took them away. Jordan had no idea what to say. Margot stepped back again and stood on her own, facing him desperately. You wanted to know what happened, she cracked. The thing I don't tell you. She paused, composing herself. He hurt us. My dad, he hurt us. Jordan's breath caught in his throat. He hurt us, and she let it happen, and then he forced me to hurt them, and she let it happen, and he forced us to hurt each other, and then she disappeared. He could feel tears welling in his own eyes. I don't know what happened to her, she sobbed. All I know is she let it happen, and when somehow the authorities found out, he hurt us again, and then they took us away and separated us so we couldn't hurt each other anymore. Margot's voice was practically non-existent from crying so hard. And I miss them, she admitted. And I don't know where they are, and I want to know they're okay. And I want them to know that I'm sorry for hurting them. The only thing Jordan could do was pull her into him again and hold her. Once more tears dripped down from his jacket as she sobbed, and this time he joined her. A faint whisper from his chest repeated, You can't leave. I'm not going to leave, he said aloud before repeating it silently to himself. We're going to stay here as long as we need to. And then we're going to go find Kent and Liz and get back home and deal with everything in the morning. Margot sniffled one last time. You promise? And I'll be with you every moment you need. He took a deep breath and kissed her hard on the forehead. I promise. I'm never going to leave.